At 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, Flight 447 had turned into a ticking time bomb. Both pilots were unconscious, the autopilot struggling, and 127 souls trapped in a metal tube with no one at the helm, except a woman in seat 14C, who everyone assumed was just another weary traveler heading home. What they didn't know was that Cassandra Reeves had once landed fighter jets on aircraft carriers in storms that would make a grown man tremble. But that was before her military career ended in disgrace, before she became invisible to the world, and now, with lives literally hanging in the balance, she had to decide whether to stay hidden or step back into the life she'd spent 5 years trying to forget. Cass adjusted her window shade for the third time that afternoon, the December sun slicing through the oval glass and painting geometric patterns across her worn paperback. To anyone looking, she was just another tired passenger, faded jeans, a navy sweater, a simple ponytail. No hint of the woman who had once commanded skies and carriers. But old habits die hard. Even while pretending to read, she felt the plane's subtle vibrations, the faint pitch of the engines, the slight pressure changes in the cabin. Details meaningless to most, but to her, they screamed of something off, something wrong. Her life had been a story ripped straight from a military adventure novel. FA-18 Super Hornets off the USS Theodore Roosevelt, precision strikes across hostile territories, commendations lining her record. 5 years ago, Major Cassandra Reeves was one of the Navy's brightest stars, fast-tracked for squadron command. Then came the incident. During a routine exercise, 2 aircraft collided in potential disaster. Cass broke formation without authorization, forcing evasive maneuvers that saved lives in multi-million-dollar jets, but violated orders, embarrassed a commander, and sealed her own fate. The court-martial stripped her of rank, pension, and identity. Civilian life in Denver followed. Technical writing, a small apartment, a reliable Honda, and a quiet anonymity that let her forget the skies. Now, as Flight 447 cruised, something prickled her instincts. The flight attendants moved with professionalism, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes. A subtle tension filled the cabin. Cass noted a man in his 40s, posture rigid, scanning the cabin, a law enforcement type, maybe an air marshal. And the plane itself betrayed minute irregularities, subtle corrections beyond turbulence, adjustments no casual passenger would notice. Her dormant training flared alive. Something was wrong in the cockpit. 20 minutes passed, each one sharpening her awareness. Flight attendants exchanged hushed words with the doctor. The air marshal discreetly called out to ground control. Then came the announcement: minor technical difficulties, diverting to Boston. Euphemisms cloaking what she already knew could be catastrophic. The autopilot wasn't enough. The pilots were incapacitated. Her fingers itched with muscle memory long dormant, the skills she thought buried ready to act. Cass unbuckled, weaving forward under the guise of casual movement, catching the attention of Agent Derek Coleman, Federal Air Marshal, just enough to register her presence without suspicion. She offered help. Flight attendants were skeptical, professional training kicking in, but she insisted. Naval aviation experience. Fighter jets. Carrier landings. 15 years of operational flying. She laid out the reality. Both pilots unresponsive, autopilot temporary, 127 lives hanging. The gravity was simple. Act or die. Questions came fast. Coleman grilled her on systems, procedures, emergency protocols. Cass answered with precision born from thousands of hours in the cockpit, every maneuver and principle ingrained through combat and carrier operations. The airplane's 737 systems were different, yes, but the fundamentals of flight never change. When she spoke to Boston Approach, her voice carried the calm authority of a commander, the kind who'd been trusted with lives in far deadlier situations. Clearance was granted, emergency services readied. Now it was her turn. The aircraft began a precarious descent. One engine flagged, its warnings glowing amber, then red. Single-engine approach. 75 tons of steel above a bustling airport with crosswinds that mocked her at every turn. She drew on everything: muscle memory, situational awareness, emergency procedures, and the improvisation that once saved her squadron. Frank Wilson, a retired airline pilot, and Helen Garcia, a flight instructor, joined her in the cockpit, lending their civilian expertise. Cass directed, coordinated, and flew. Every movement deliberate, every adjustment precise, eyes scanning instruments, windscreen, and the subtle hints of the plane's mood at 5,000 feet. The final descent pressed the limits of physics and nerve. Crosswinds demanded continuous correction. The asymmetric thrust required precise rudder control. Each decision carried amplified consequences. Too early, too late, too much, too little. 30 feet above the ground, the remaining engines surged, a last-minute rebellion. Cass corrected instantly, flaring the aircraft for landing. Runway 4 arose to meet her. The main gear kissed the tarmac. The nose followed. Relief, barely perceptible but felt in every nerve in the cabin. Passengers clutched armrests, whispered prayers, and let out the breaths they'd been holding. Flight attendants exchanged looks of disbelief and admiration. Captain Price and First Officer Shaw began regaining consciousness, their world colliding with the reality that someone had saved them, an anonymous passenger who wasn't so anonymous anymore. Cass had done more than fly. She had reclaimed competence in the face of bureaucracy and disaster. Outside, emergency personnel waited, engines cool, lights flashing. Inside, Cassandra Reeves was no longer the invisible ex-military pilot blending into civilian life. She was Major Reeves, a testament to skill, judgment, and courage, validated under the most extreme circumstances. Media swarmed, agencies investigated, the pilots confirmed her actions saved lives. The sedative in the coffee, intentional poisoning, revealed the stakes had been criminal, not accidental. Her competence had thwarted a catastrophe. Weeks later, recognition arrived. The Navy reviewed her court-martial. Her rank was restored. United Airlines offered a role developing emergency procedures, not because of certification, but because of proven ability. The aviation industry adopted protocols for recognizing expertise beyond traditional boundaries, integrating civilian skill sets into emergency planning. Flight 447's passengers formed annual groups, celebrating survival and advocacy for preparedness. Federal investigations led to the arrest of the saboteur, Marcus Webb, and tightened security standards that Cassandra's life transformed, but the lesson transcended one woman's story. Preparation, judgment, and courage can overcome institutional barriers. Expertise maintained in quiet diligence can save lives when others falter. Systems evolved because one former pilot refused to stay invisible when it mattered most. Her legacy wasn't just in the safe landing of Flight 447. It was in a shift toward recognizing real competence over credentials, courage over compliance, and readiness over routine. So, what would you do if you found yourself on a flight where the odds were stacked against you, and the only one capable of taking control was someone whose qualifications were questioned, whose past was controversial, yet whose skills mattered more than certificates? Share your thoughts. Was Cassandra right to step in, or should protocol have ruled? And remember, in moments like these, the line between heroism and rule-breaking isn't just paper thin. It can define the difference between life and death.